It is Golden Black Live, and Brian Newbert joins us talk about that little interesting thing called a coaching search, and obviously Purdue men's basketball too, and on down the line. I want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, On the Hill but on the Level, a Purdue tradition since 1929. John Basham and Basham Reynolds saw John a couple of times this week, and John busy getting ready for the 2017-18 school year, if you can imagine that. And Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day, stay at HGI tonight. Christy Kuntz, the good folks down on the levee, have been great to us as well. State Farm agent Trent Johnson, trentismyagent.com, and Trent always has his ear to the ground of what's going on in Purdue sports as well. Brian, not a whole lot going on these days, it seems, but it never seems to stop.
I'm bored.
Yeah, I know.
Give me something to do.
One thing I wanted to get to, and we'll get obviously to the coaching search and basketball, et cetera, but you did go see A.J. Hammonds this week, or a couple days ago, and wrote a story from anything else that you gleaned from that trip down to see him. And I know he did not dress or play for that game, but what'd you take away from seeing A.J.?
Yeah, it was one of the better A.J. Hammonds interviews I think I've ever been part of, because he was engaged, he was animate, he was interactive. He seemed self-aware. He seemed like a guy who understands. I was a second-round pick for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I am a guy who very easily could have been drafted 30 picks higher and making a lot of money and not inactive for my first NBA game. And I think that stuff's starting to hit home with him. He has to understand I have to be a professional in more than just talent at this level to make it. I think he understands that the Mavericks have made an investment in him. They're expecting, something out of him. They're going to hold him to a standard that he's been held to in the past, though not quite with the same leverage that the NBA franchises will have, where they can just cut him tomorrow if they get tired of him. So I think he's more aware than I've ever seen him of the reality of his situation. So hopefully for his sake, he understands these things and he acts on them and he makes the most of this, because it would be a damn shame with his kind of ability and his kind of talent for him to not be a viable pro and make a career out of this.
Yeah, he is. He is talented, and based on what we've seen out of him, especially the last 2 years, it'll be interesting to see where he finds his place in the league. Let's start with Purdue Penn State. We'll talk a little football on the front end. Just your observations of, obviously, I'm going to call it something short of the Jared Parker phenomenon, but because they got to win some football games to really make it such. But it's been an interesting last almost 10 days since the transition, and has that surprised you?
When I heard when we learned that Parker was going to be the interim coach, it didn't surprise me. Nothing would have surprised me, because he has that ability. There's a couple guys on the staff, Marcus Freeman being another, who I think have the ability to bring things out of people.
Yeah.
And Parker is absolutely positively one of those guys, someone that players respond to. And when in a situation like this, when you have somebody who can bring something out of people that can allow them to perform at a higher level than perhaps they should otherwise, I think you see what you saw for half the game at Nebraska. Purdue played with emotion. Purdue played with passion. Purdue had fun. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure Purdue's had fun in a long time. The concern for me, from a Purdue perspective, with that is that emotion can be a difficult thing to sustain. And when you look at the Nebraska game, hey, look, suddenly Purdue can tackle.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
It's because they're playing with energy, they're playing with passion, they're playing, hard, quite frankly. And I don't know if that's a thing where that can be sustained over a long period of time. A lot of what Purdue did last week schematically is on tape now.
Yeah.
So I think Purdue's in for quite a challenge tomorrow, because the unknown is not as much on their side anymore.
I would agree with that.
Plus, there's always the burnout factor, where you throw everything into that kind of passionate, emotional blaze of glory last week, and now you wonder if you can do it 2 weeks in a row. I'm not saying Purdue's done for the season. I'm saying I don't know if you can do it twice in 7 days.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see tomorrow, 12 noon, Ross-Ade Stadium, Purdue, Penn State. That will be much of the telltale as we look into where this team goes for its final 5 games. Okay, coaching search, obviously this is in the background. Mike Babinski has talked openly about making sure that this football team is taken care of, and that's Jared Parker's job, but certainly Babinski giving that emphasis he's also busy looking for a football coach, and at least I'm sure in the process of evaluating. I know we'll be talking to Mike Berghoff hopefully soon, but what's your inclination of where they might be? We don't know where they are exactly. Obviously, they're not sharing it with us, but where this search would naturally be at this point in time, do you think?
Yeah, well, most likely Purdue, for its part, is just laying the groundwork here. They're just deciding what they want in a coach, maybe compiling a preliminary list. We know that there's a search firm that's going to be involved. We don't know which search firm it is. Not that it really matters
No.
all that much to us. We don't know the difference between one search firm and another. But what the search firm does is acts as the intermediary that actually conducts the search from a contact perspective, from a communication perspective with people, to afford the school itself, some separation here and some plausible deniability in terms of, hey, this school's talking to our coach, during their season, not cool, But I think, there's going to be some things going on back channel wise where some coaches are going to be reached out to gauge their interest, to express Purdue's interest, whatever the case may be. And that's where kind of the groundwork for this sort of stuff is laid. That way, when the IU game is done, assuming they don't go to a bowl game, let's continue to acknowledge that possibility.
Yeah, still possible.
But once the IU game's over with, then they have a good starting point where they can contact people, they can get people in for interviews right away. They know where they stand with this candidate, that candidate, what have you, who's coming, who's not, what we have to do to get this guy potentially, what we have to do to get that guy potentially, what are the landmines with this candidate, so on and so forth. So right now the search is ongoing. It's just going to be an underground sort of thing.
Yeah, you look at the situation too, and do you have any sense, the athletic director search, it seemed to me the focus was on the Power Five. I understand they're not two of the same things, but do you have any sense that might be a focus? Do you think experience, and we can't, obviously you can't discriminate by age, but experience and energy level seem to be a part of this, but what's your sense there?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at established head coaches, if you want somebody with Power 5 experience, that's a pretty small window or a pretty small pool to draw from in terms of guys in jobs who are successful enough to want, who are in jobs that they might be willing to leave for Purdue. I know Big Ten resources are what they are, and there's a certain number of guys from certain programs you can probably get from the Power 5 level. But at the same time, when you're looking at guys who've been exceedingly successful, they're at a place in their careers where they're attractive to you. I'm not saying age. I'm saying, I'm saying energy level.
Sure, absolutely.
So on and so forth. That's not a big pool. There's always the possibility that there are winning coaches out there in situations that they're just done with. Perhaps they've overstayed their welcome, so to speak. Perhaps their fan base has turned on them because they're only winning 7 or 8 games a year, so on and so forth. But there's no way of knowing who that coach, if there is that coach out there, who that might be right now. Outside of that, obviously, you always look at the mid majors. You look at the hot young assistants. You look at the NFL maybe in some ways for your pool of candidates. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if Purdue, at least initially, targets people in Power 5.
Yeah, and you have that situation that, and you can do the research, and instead, like you said, there's no real way of knowing whether a David Cutcliffe at Wake Forest would be a good fit, or would he have any interest because, for whatever reason, at Duke, not at Wake Forest, I'm sorry, right. And that you're in a situation that is a situation that you just don't have any feel for it until this reaches critical mass, and all of a sudden the bees start buzzing and this comes to pass.
Also, I think the conference realignment sort of Cold War from a couple years ago has settled. So maybe 3 years ago you would have seen some people from the Big 12 or the ACC, wherever it might be, running for cover, and they would run to a Purdue job. They'd run to the Purdue job because it's Big Ten security in an era where nobody knew if their conference
But there
was
could
gonna
be some
exist.
Big 12 of that.
There still could be some Big 12 in that, but I just think the whole landscape is more settled than it was a couple years ago. It might still be there in part that people would want Big Ten, would want to cover the Big Ten over another Power 5 conference, but I don't think it's as pronounced as maybe it was a couple years ago. Something about this search, too, is Purdue's going to need probably a deep pool of candidates because it has to be ready to be told no. Purdue can put whatever resources it wants into this. They can pay $3+ million a year, which is probably going to be the going rate. on the open market this year for somebody, proven, if they're going to get somebody proven. But Purdue's situation on the field is not an overnight fix. And coaches want security. Coaches who you're going to try to get to leave a good situation for an uncertain one, that can be a hard sell.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
Purdue's going to have to be ready to talk to some coaches who aren't going to be willing to make that move, because it could, if it doesn't work, it sets back or ruins their careers in their own eyes, depending on what that particular coach's ambitions are.
Well, like you said, too, the groundwork has to be made, but it all can change with one person, one olive coming out of the proverbial jar at the wrong time or the right time. With Brian, let's say Brian Kelly loses his job at Notre Dame. Not saying that's going to happen, but it can change the whole landscape instantly.
Yeah, something about this job too. When we talk about its appeal to candidates, we tend to look at it like it's a 4 or 5 year rebuilding job. Well, it's really, that's not really reality in college sports anymore. All it takes is one team to overachieve, have a good season, get some momentum going, get some buzz going. That helps recruiting. Suddenly, you're on stable ground, and then the next step up from stable ground is actually winning.
Yeah.
When you look at what got Darrell Hazel the Purdue job a couple years ago, I mean, he coached the worst program in Division I football. By most measures, Kent State is the worst program in Division I football. He happened upon a team that, by every account that I've heard, had great seniors who were just tired of losing, great leadership, and they found a way to win a lot of close games with conservative offense and good defense. And all it takes is that one team to get your program up and running again. Now, Kent State has obviously since regressed to its historical place in the world, but at a place like Purdue, if you can have that season, you can parlay that into some recruiting success, you can parlay that into your players feeling good about themselves, all of a sudden the ball is rolling.
Yeah. A couple minutes left here, but wanted to hit on men's basketball. You obviously were down for availability here earlier today. Any sense of early on, the Boilermakers open up on Tuesday in their exhibition game at home in Mackey Arena, but any sense, any storylines that you're following from this last week or so in terms of being around this basketball team?
I think the guards are going to be better. I think they're going to be more positions to be better. I think experience alone makes them better. I think confidence makes them better. I think P.J. Thompson's going to be an improved player. I think Dakota Mathias is going to play this season like he played the end of last season. Mm-hmm. A confident, assertive player who makes Purdue better when he's playing that way on offense. Purdue's maybe, I don't know, I'm maybe making too big of a deal of this than should be, but I think that, Purdue's putting in a little more kind of ball screen stuff into their offense, more designed stuff to empower its guards a little bit more, maybe to play to Carson Edwards' strength a little bit more, maybe to put Spike Albrecht in more of a little bit of a comfort zone for him, maybe just to send the message to their guards, hey, we want you guys to be playmakers this year as opposed to just sitting on the ball and not turning it over. See, that was the thing, is Purdue's, their role last year was not turn the ball over. They did that at a historic rate. But now it's like, all right, guys, maybe we'll take a few more turnovers, but make some plays.
Yeah.
Make some plays this year. But I think Dakota Mathias will be used a little bit differently. I think you'll see him in some pick and roll stuff with Caleb Swanigan here and there. And I just think their guards are going to be more empowered, more confident, and better. I think their personnel is better in the backcourt, too, offensively. Carson Edwards is a potentially game changer as a spark. I think Spike Albrecht gives them something that, they really need. And I think P.J. Thompson improves, Dakota Mathias improves, Ryan Klein improves. And I just think you're going to see more balance from Purdue this year.
And certainly what Kathy Wright-Eager talked about, Spike Albrecht, the leader, and what he brings, is going to be interesting to see how that all works. It sounds like it's going to work well, at least from a team composition standpoint. All right, Brian, well, thank you for your insight as always, and we want to thank our sponsors again, Triple X, John Basham and the good folks at Basham Rental, Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, and of course Cammie Gordon. Allie was not here today, but she's always here in spirit. But the good folks, as I always say, at WLFI as well, for all their support. We will be back next week prior to Purdue, Minnesota. Stacy will be on the road, but we'll be talking a lot of men's basketball as well. I'm sure we'll have more on the coaching search. Kelly Kitchell will join us too from the Purdue Radio Network. He gets to stay even though the team will be leaving. He has a high school coaching gig, but he'll have some comments for us next week as well, as we look forward to that convergence of basketball and football, and a lot to look forward to in the world of Purdue sports. All right, thanks everyone. We had a great week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on Gold and Black Live.